All right.
So take where they are on their BAS, like say, and we could do it where they're, and it could be done with Lexi, but if they're on an M or an N, what would be a reasonable, if as a student who's already being successful, what would be a reasonable expectation for them to be at the end of the year? We want to see growth,
Mm-hmm.
and like it says in the standards, commensurate with their ability.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one way I can improve my work with that position is to make sure that I'm clearly tracking that data. Are the students with what I'm providing them, are we seeing improvement? And I know their classroom teachers are a huge part of that, but if we were to see a student in my program whose reading ability or math went down,
Mm-hmm.
then I need to evaluate what I'm providing, or is there, another reason that there was.
Okay.
Like I had one student whose reading score went down. It was not surprising considering that he went through the loss of a parent last
Mm-hmm.
year. But I want to look for those patterns, and I think the BAS might be in reading a good way to do that.
Okay.
And the NWEA.
Right.
We're looking. What I like about the NWEA is the questions get harder the more successful they are. And since I've been really pushing with the students this year, your goal needs to be in all subject areas a 4. Even if you don't get to a 4, that's your goal. I think the NWA is another tool that would help me see if they're pushing themselves for that.
Okay. So being more intentional about using the
data.
assessment data that we have available to us, and aligning that to your program as a Cub Time teacher and as a Tier 3 reading teacher, in terms of if kids are making the growth that you want them to see.
Yes.
Okay. And so you told me evidence of that for you would look like really being intentional about working closely with grade level teachers, also just going on into our system and gathering that data yourself. What do you think that would look like for students? What are you hoping for students to be doing in terms of maintaining a high level of student engagement, but then going back to your goal about ensuring that it's clear that they understand what the goal or objective is, the learning target?
Well, I think part of that would be, the students, like last year I used a little checkout slip that each day that they, and it rotated different days, it was different things, and I think maybe developing that a little bit more.
Okay.
And focusing more on not just the what, but why.
Okay.
What, how, and helping them think of how will they really be using this, or is it just because it's fun?
Right. Okay. All right.
So,
so looking at the lessons through the lens of our Marzano framework, and really focusing on those elements, on the learning goals and scales, we've been talking about quite a bit here. Do you have any questions when it comes to the feedback that we provided you as to where you are in that continuum and where you want to go?
No, I found that the feedback helpful. Of course, I'm disappointed I'm not further along, but today we were reminded about the whole growth.
Right.
I could get caught up in the disappointment or look for places to improve.
Right. Right. Okay. And so that's element 1. The other element 12 is really being reflective with students in an intentional way, so they can go a bit deeper with their own learning, and not getting caught up in the tool. If we're using the tool Seesaw as a way to house their learning, what ways are you thinking you're getting kids to think, be reflective, or opportunities for kids to be reflective with their learning, whether it be maybe more so in the Cub Time where than in the Tier 3 reading,
Tier 3, like with the Tier 3, what I'm doing with them is each week on Friday, and maybe you can tell me if I'm on the right track with this. They've been working with me on scales, with fluent reading, what is a 1, we put it in terms of, to make sure you're not a race car, but you're also not a robot.
Right.
And it's not about reaching a certain level, but each time you feel more comfortable with your reading, and we graph it. And then on Fridays, right now, they're self-selecting 2 or 3 sentences from what we've been reading together, and they demonstrate fluent reading. Either they can tape themselves or in front of a small group. But it's a self-selected, this is what I feel this is my instructional level, and
Mm-hmm.
I can read this fluently, and then they demonstrate that for us.
Right.
And then we talk about, well, how did that feel? What parts did you do that were reflected?
Right.
And Mrs. Heeman showed me the app she uses to do something similar.
Okay.
So I think part of that is giving them opportunity to orally reflect.
Right.
And some choice and self-selection.
Right.
So that's one way I thought we could do that, or I could do that with the Tier 3 students.
Right. And I think, so allowing them the time to be
Mhm.
able to process and reflect,
Yep.
capturing that in a way that they can then come back to it and view it, and then providing some voice and choice. And I think those things not only hit the reflective aspect of the Marzano element that we're trying to get to, but it also connects right to student engagement. When kids can think about their learning
Yes.
in a different way, it gives them an opportunity then to say, okay, this is where what I need to do to learn and grow. And giving that voice and choice also, of course, promotes student engagement. So I think those are real quality aspects. And I saw that in the lesson, Rebecca. I think really qualities that you've had and continue to show, are that connectivity, that relational aspect with students. You get how a student operates. You get how a student's mind operates, and are able to bring a real nebulous concept idea and bring it down to students in a way that they can understand it, and allow them to take ownership of their learning. Many times as educators or adults, we feel like we have to be in the front and we have to do the leading. But when we talk about self-directed learning, from what I've seen, you've done a masterful job of getting kids to take ownership of their learning and giving them guidance, being that guide on the side, and facilitating their learning versus filling them up.
Yeah.
I think you did a wonderful job, and hopefully you felt excuse me, the feedback that I gave you, shared that again, when we look at element 22 and really going deep with their learning, again, allowing kids to not only in cub time but also in your reading time, I think allowing them to process. Time is always a factor.
Yeah.
Right? We've only got so much time to do it, so I think rewinding back to our conversation just a moment ago about being very clear and specific as to what learning target, what objective you want them to get to, I think will help you refine and use the time that you do have,
Yeah.
maximize that time in a maybe much more efficient way than what you've been able to do. And then the student engagement piece as well. Again, kids like to do,
Mm-hmm.
and that's always our goal. And I think you recognize that, and you provide time for kids to do. And doing can be a lot of different things. It can be doing mentally, and it can be doing hands-on. And whether it was the cub time lesson or the reading lesson that you did with our Tier 3 kids, you allowed ample time for them to do. When you think about that gradual release method going from I do to we do to you do,
Yeah.
you provided time for kids to do. So just kind of in summary, Rebecca, what I'm hearing you say then is a goal that you have for yourself is really focusing on that element 1, learning goals and scales,
Mm-hmm.
and being very clear with students and yourself about really the difference between an objective or a learning target and the task or the activity that you want them to do.
Like with the students giving their first oral presentation, that was really a task. The bigger picture is one of the standards is for students to give both group presentations and individual presentations, and I needed to see that task is building to a bigger objective.
Right.
If that
No,
makes
that does
sense.
make sense. And then in addition to that, though, then really being intentional about getting the data, whether it be BAS kits, using the map data that we have, other summative assessments that we've created. So then you know and can share with students, are they making the growth that you want them in correlation to what they're doing in their core, in their homeroom, but certainly when they're in time with you, how are you adding to their learning?
Do you think it would be reasonable, since I have a smaller group this year, with the BAS to maybe meet with students, because I can work it into my schedule, meet with them individually, and the two of us, the student and I together, come up with a goal for them. I want to be reading this level by the end of the year, and then we could have, check-ins. So, well, where are you? What book have you been selecting? And they like to share what they've read with each other, with me.
I mean, well, let me just ask you a question in response to that. Do you believe that having students take ownership in their learning is a good thing?
Yes.
Yes, as do I. And do you believe that having students be self-directed learners is where we want to go?
Yes.
As do I. And so I think that answers that question in terms of having them be part of their learning and having a conversation with a teacher about where they are and where they want to go, and having goal setting, I think, is all part of self-directed learning and having kids take ownership. So no, I think that would, in addition to, again, being very clear, differentiating between an objective and a task, and gathering that evidence, being intentional this year about having those conversations with kids along the way, and maybe it is just one conversation that you're able to have this year, but as you develop this procedure, maybe it's a pre and a post, beginning when an enter and an exit type of thing, that so you can have.
And I like that we're towards the very end of the year, meet with them, see where they ended up with their reading, and even if they didn't meet the goal, then that gives us something to process too, and to talk about, what went well, sort of like we do as adults.
Right, absolutely.
I like that idea.
Okay.
With learning objectives versus tasks, what I'd like to do is, for the units I'm working on, is this time that we have this weekend, I was going to write out my, I was going to touch and make sure with all the teachers that I'm on the right ELOs. And I even wanted to pull for the Tier 3 students, for the students that I'm doing comprehension with, the ELOs they're doing in their regular class.
Okay.
And I don't know if maybe Danita's a better person, but would you be willing to look over those and see if I'm on the right track?
Most definitely. No, I'm a resource, but I think you're right. Danita, Becky Demmer, our continuous improvement coach, I think between the three of us, we can certainly give you feedback on that and be a thinking partner with you. I think that would be, I'm more than willing to do that.
I think one of my mistakes is, because I do so much of my work outside of the other teachers have their teams.
Right.
That the only thoughts I'm hearing are my own.
Sure,
so
sure. And that might even lead us into the whole, PLC conversation, and knowing that you are a singleton per se in this building, ensuring that you are PLCing, and whether it be with Coach Gilmore, I know you've done some with her in the primary building, but if your goal is to really connect learning through the ELOs that the students have at each grade level, maybe 1 week it would be with Coach Gilmore, 1 week it would be 3rd grade, 1 week would be 4th grade, 1 week would be 5th grade, just to stay connected. To your point, you're hearing your own thoughts, but bouncing ideas with our other colleagues and through their PLC, and maybe another way for you to be able to connect with your connect that way.
I like that. Yeah, rotate them. I like that.
Right. Do you mind if we go through our planning and preparation? My battery just died, so I can just turn that enough.